Hello, my name is Rohan Titus. I was born in Sri Lanka and came to Australia as a little boy at the end of the White Australia policy. So in 1972 we were one of the first cohort of skilled migrants that came through after that policy ended. And I can remember attending Anzac Days in Brisbane in the early 70s when the Vietnam War was still going. I attended high school in Sydney at Sydney Church of England Grammar School, Shaw School, and I did Army and Air Force cadets there. And my mother was quite concerned I might join the ADF, and I thought, no, I don't want to do that. Don't mind playing with toy soldiers, but don't want to be one.
I'm Mike Handley. I'm an Australian Army veteran, joined the Royal Australian Corps of Transport. I thoroughly, I enjoyed my role. I was lucky enough, after my first 12 months of being stationed at Townsville, Somalia had kicked off, and that was the UN's, United Nations contribution to Somalia, and the American-led Operation Restore Hope. So it was an area that was basically corroded with chaos. The government, there was no law, and we were tasked to sort of re-establish law and order and provide humanitarian aid and relief to that area.
My name's Christelle Jones. I'm currently a captain in the Australian Full-Time Army as a Transport Logistic Officer. I'm currently posted down to Albury Logistic Training Centre down in Albury, Wodonga, where I have a 2-year posting, and I'm working for Workforce Training Group, working on analyse and design of LMPs. In 2021, I also was very lucky that I got another opportunity where I deployed as a peacekeeper, UNMO, so UN Military Observer, to our current Australian operation, Op Paladin, which is the ADF contribute to UNSO. It was there I was deployed for 8 months, where I lived in Lebanon, and I was posted to the outpost station of Team Zulu. I worked with approximately 10 to 12 people over there from other countries, from Norway to Sweden to Denmark to China to Fiji, Irish, and it was there where we patrolled. We used to jump in a vehicle, into an up-armoured vehicle, and would do a 6-hour patrol along the blue line. And that's where we were able to monitor, observe and report any violations in vicinity of the blue line under the United Nations Security Council resolution.
So my name's Ian Rickmans. I'm 59 years old, and I feel like I've done the whole circle of the world and come back from where I've started from now. I was educated in Canberra, and then after my service overseas, where I spent almost 10 years, I've ended up back in Canberra again, and I'm able today to speak about my experiences both in the service and going across, how it led me to be in the UNPROFOR mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I went to a lot of outposts and a lot of postings in my time.
In my life I've travelled quite a bit and been deployed in various roles around the place, nationally and internationally for various events. I had the pleasure of working on the Commonwealth Games in Queensland as the emergency services representative there for the rest of Australia, outside of Queensland, which was good, but also having served overseas in a number of locations overseas, through the Middle East, in Asia, and a little bit in the Pacific.
While I was doing this trauma course, a couple of the girls on the course got phone calls from our posters saying that they're being posted to Rwanda for the next rotation. And I went, well, I want to go. So I rang our poster and he said, well, you're in operating room nurses. They never want to go anywhere. I went, well, I want to go. And he went, well, you can go. So I went back into the course and went, I'm going. And none of us had any idea what we were going to, why we were really going, or anything about it.
My name's Christine Laurie. I live in Canberra. I went to Bougainville at the end of 2001 to March 2002 as a civilian peace monitor. I understand it was the first time the government had used civilians in peace work, and I was honoured to go. Overall, it was a very positive experience. I enjoyed my time there. I was felt very fortunate to be chosen, and I enjoyed meeting the people, and I actually enjoyed working and living with the military as well. I don't know if you've read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, but it kind of felt like that. You're in a whole different world, and then you step back out of the wardrobe and it looked as though nothing had changed, but it kind of had.
East Timor had been on the radar for a good 6 months leading into before we went off. It was very hush-hush, no one had spoken about it. So I think it was September 19th, 1999, so a millennia ago, that we went out and we flew in. There were obviously already people in Timor, the SAS were there, they'd been there for a fair while. There was the Federal Police, some air traffic controlmen, but we flew in. We hit the airport at Dili there. We hit at scale and in force. Like, we weren't peacekeeping, what they call peacemaking. So you had red card. Normally with peacekeeping, they've only got what they call, there's a yellow and a red card, and that gives you your directions of what you can do if something happens or if you interact with someone. We actually had a red card to shoot, if you like, use force, probably the more polite way to say it. We had a lawyer on a couple of hours the day before we left, took us through what we were and weren't allowed to do, type thing. So that was the difference between peacekeeping and it was a peacemaking force. So we were there to use force and actually push the Indonesians out if they didn't want to go. They were still around. They destroyed the place. The place was just on fire. When we got there, everything was on fire. They were taken back to the Stone Age. It's only looking back, like, noticeably, there's a whole age group of women that were slaughtered and no longer there. Now, a lot of that stuff was not reported. They were trying to keep face. Indonesia at the time were about to go through an election.
I'm Jen Whitwer, and I'm 61 years of age, and I've been embarked on a second career about 5 years ago, of which I think a lot of it came from the service that I had given in the Royal Australian Navy, and initially in the Women's Royal Australian Naval Service, which was the service that I joined way back in 1981.
Sarajevo, the shelling was just so heavy that literally I could say 90% of my stint in Sarajevo I spent in that building. And at night time I got to know each floor very well, because every night a round would drop near my side and the western side. I would pick my sleeping bag and go to the northern side, lie in the bed, get some sleep, and then a round would drop on the northern side. Then I would get out of bed again and then move it to the southern side. And I realised I'm not getting anywhere. It's almost like someone knew where I was going to sleep on each side of the building where the round would drop. But it really, it rattled you. And I can't believe the amount of I got used to living without sleep. I think you were running on adrenaline the whole time, and I didn't realise that until I left Sarajevo and I entered Split.
This is our security chain. As you can see, the Milan's gone off here. I'm going to move close to it, but it's a fucking mess.
I slept that first night for 24 hours straight. It was just like it just hit me. I'll never forget that. It was just, and it was like a rush, a breath of complete breathing fresh air, and all the weight lifting from your head to leave Sarajevo. I thought I was so hyped up and so used to the rounds landing every day and hearing it, that when I got to Split, the quietness, the peacefulness, it just blew me away. But I was just so happy. I was almost thankful for I've got out of here alive. I can't believe this. And I thought, never going back.
Tensions were building and building, and they'd been there a few days, and then all of a sudden, one side of the camp opened up fire on the other side of the camp and trapped right in the middle with the Australians. And whilst the RPA were trying to fire on the intra-harmway, they were mass killing civilians. So fathers, women, children, families, grandparents, And this was all happening right in front of the Australians. And the Australians called back to the headquarters and said, we're taking fire. And when the situation was discussed, it was decided that, well, the fire's not actually being directed on you, you're just in the middle of it, so you can't return fire. So unless somebody is firing directly at you, you cannot return fire. And anyway, who were they supposed to fire into? Because there was just this human shield of civilians between them and the army and the intra-harmway. So they all hit the dirt. And for a very short period of time, headquarters back in Kigali had no idea whether their people on the ground were alive or dead, because as everything started getting closer to them, rounds were, people would hit the dirt, but rounds were falling at head level at people on the ground. And the story that Robbie Lucas tells of him turning around and just watching bullets, and he's waiting for them to get closer and closer to him, and finally till one hit him, but thank God no one was hurt.
I've got memories, great stories, as I showed you before. I've got, comics. Although it's not a huge part of my life anymore, I've been out now for, Somalia was 30 years ago. We only just had the 30-year reunion this year. It's always there. It's you can't shake it. And I said most of my memories are good memories. There are the occasional ones, but that bring me down, and you spend a little bit of time trying to decipher and work out, could I have done this better? Could I have done that? But at the end of the day, you just got to accept what you did, the environment that you're in, the situation that was presented to you, and you look at it as a positive. And I didn't dwell on it. I just took all the goodness out and put it into my new life. The negatives, I looked at them as little bits of weaknesses, but I had to work on them to be a better person, and I have, and I've, I continue to work strong to this day, and I think what I do now, I'm extremely passionate. I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can help others through my company. And and I love what I do. As a senior officer at the academy, I was asked to teach leadership to the ADFA cadets. Again, something that I would never have thought that I would do outside of my kind of role as a logistics officer, but something I thought, well, actually, why not? Why not be in a position to start to help shape the minds of the young officers that were coming through, who are going to be the future leaders. Now, I don't know personally if I had any influence or, enabled any change in some of the young people that I encountered, but I felt it was a really great opportunity for me to give in a way that I hadn't, that I wasn't doing as a supply officer. So again, that notion of service, I think, it shows itself up in many ways. And it's not just about going off and fighting for your country anymore. It is about what you do here that enables the military to be as effective as it possibly can when it does go off and fight at war. So shaping the minds of young leaders is a really important part of their growth, as well as the Navy's growth, or the Air Force's growth, or the Army's growth. Shaping the right leaders and shaping the leaders the right way, I think, is really important.
I don't know if you'd heard this story, but there was a kid in one of the camps that one of the infantry soldiers gave him some chocolate, and the infantry soldiers would play with them all the time. They'd play soccer or whatever with these kids. And this kid to himself thought, I want to be like that. I want to do that. And that child grew up, convinced his family to come to Australia. They emigrated to Australia, and he is an infantry soldier in the Australian Infantry. And he came and spoke to us when we received the meritorious unit citations, and that was given to the contingents combined and individually. It's the first time the government's ever done it. So we won them as an individual, which is why we can wear them as well as the contingent, because we didn't belong to a unit. It wasn't just a unit that went over. Yeah, and he came and spoke to us there and said it was the kindness of an Australian soldier that got him through that experience and made him want to be a soldier so that he can do that for someone else.
there is no question that Australia is working towards a more peaceful, more stable, more prosperous neighbourhood. And I'm not speaking as a DFAT person, I don't work in DFAT anymore, so just as a private citizen, I can see things have got better since I joined the Department of Foreign Affairs in 1995. Right? The world is a incrementally better place in a lot of places, not uniformly and not everywhere, but in most places there is a chance of things being better. And you start with hope and you work from there. So I think in the 80s when I was a kid, I don't know if people can remember Band-Aid and the terrible famines in the Horn of Africa that led to the world suddenly becoming aware on a people-to-people, ordinary person level what it was like in these situations of great deprivation. And prior to that, you became aware through newsprint. It wasn't quite as impactful as live footage. And I think this is more and more a thing. The generations that come after us are very much more interconnected across countries, and that has to be a good thing. I mean, they're much more able. I look at my daughter and her friends and that generation, and I think, yeah, this is actually much more hopeful for the future than mine. So yeah, I think so. I think the world is getting better. I think the gap is potentially there to get smaller, and the technology is certainly there for us to develop the world in a better way if we are able to do it. And if the will is there, then I think the purpose can certainly be achieved.